we want to start off by talking about last week's protest march in London. Jen, Alison, and myself were there, and we had a fairly good turnout, I'd say, although it could always have been more. We really, need a much bigger presence still, but it wasn't too bad. And we did have people join us along the way, which swelled our numbers somewhat. And we had the Stop the Bill car that came along with Alison, the Scrap the Schools Bill car, and had a very loud presence there in terms of colour. And we had a great lineup of speakers. Alison, would you like to tell us a little bit about your experience of the day and what your message was?
Right. I was the first speaker on the stage, and I thought there was an amazing buzz. It was a very, very, very lovely atmosphere. It really was. The people that turned up, I knew a lot of them. I knew an awful lot of the people who turned up, because it's often the usual suspects, isn't it? And it was so friendly. The police were absolutely fantastic. And in fact, the police commented very favourably about the atmosphere on the protest. They were very, very pleased with how we conducted ourselves, etc. They said it's one of the more pleasant rallies they ever have escorted through London. We were also polite, they said, which was quite lovely, really. So I spoke to a great number of the general things about the bill, like, for example, the breakfast clubs, and how actually feeding children a cheap breakfast in the morning can actually hide abuse, because if you are feeding everybody, you're hiding the ones who are hungry. If you don't spot the ones who are hungry, hunger in the morning is a very, very big red flag for something not right at home. Social workers will tell you that. Is a very big red flag. So if you hide that red flag, you could very easily not find the issues. And this is, again, it plays to the register as well, making the haystack bigger. We treat all parents with suspicion. We make the haystack bigger. We don't find the issues and concentrate our very meagre resources on the issues. The march was really good. The atmosphere was really good. Addison, our young friend, gave the best speech I've ever heard from somebody of his age. Wow. That was powerful, wasn't it, Juliet? It really was.
And we have that on video as well. So particularly if you go over to the Stop the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill page, a lot of the footage is there. Not all of it makes its way into to the action group. So do go over and have a look at that page, because you will see a lot of the video footage and photographs from the day. And we really would ask you to continue to share about this protest too, so that the media picks it up. Continue to promote what we did in London last week and talk about it. So, Jen, you were also there. Have you got anything you want to say about the day?
It's a fantastic day. It's always lovely to come together with like-minded people and to have that kind of strength in knowing that lots of people agree. We had good numbers. Of course, it would be amazing if we could all agree one date and agree there'd never be another protest again, and everyone just turned up. If say 70% of home educators turned up, or 50%, that would just be amazing. I've posted quite a lot this week about the frustration of this bill not being talked about enough, with people playing it down, with people being quite ignorant about what it's about and kind of glossing over it. And so I've been kind of trying to talk about it more. And a few people are kind of going, oh, you're shaming people. Yeah. You're shaming people for not taking action or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just trying to make it really clear that if we don't talk about it, there's going to be a lot of people that can be very, very upset in 12 months' time when this stuff comes in, and they're going, why didn't anyone warn me? Why didn't anyone tell me? Because with algorithms the way they are on Facebook, you could post about it weekly and still people would miss it. I think that's kind of just my thing. It's so hard to put everything back in the can when it's all spilt over the floor, and we're in the position at the moment that if 1,000 people showed up, if you think there's how many home.
Okay, I think Jen's frozen on us there, but she makes that fair. She makes it.
5,000. It's such a tiny percentage. It's not. We're not talking about every single, parent that has a really high support needs young person, or every parent who's
we're both having problems with internet tonight,
saying,
both Jen and I, I'm afraid.
If half
is there a football match on or something?
The impact would be phenomenal. And we probably wouldn't need another protest because it would be so impactful. So it was a great day. It was lovely to see people. We need more people to come to these things. It's very encouraging, and it was lovely to see the younger speakers. I think young people speaking is always really important. It's all very well us going on, but it makes a big difference to hear young people and their lived experience.
Yeah, we've had a fair bit of glitching there. Sorry, Jen, and Alison, I think, we've lost her. So it is just a bit of a problem with internet and so on where people are. But as they've said, we had a good showing, but I don't think we even had 1% of the action group members there. We have nearly 17,000 members, and we certainly didn't have 10% of the group, and I don't believe we even had 1% of the group there. We even had members on the group saying that they'd only just heard about the protest afterwards. And this is somebody who's a member of the action group. People are saying that they don't always have time to watch the lives. You need to realize that the reason we have these lives is to make sure you have information, and it just takes half an hour basically on a Friday night to get the information. And if you would like to make sure you don't miss anything, please subscribe to the Substack so that you can get everything in your inbox every Monday. So you will get the live. The live will be linked to, and there will be all the things we've discussed and more in the Substack on a Monday morning. So please, there's really no excuse to not be informed. We're doing everything we can. I know the algorithms are nasty, but even if you just go onto the action group page once a day and do a quick scroll down to see what is new, what's the latest. So please just take some responsibility to find out what's happening in the group, because we're doing our best here and we need as much support as possible. Christine has asked a question about whether we've had any feedback from non-action group people, example, politicians. I can't really answer that. I don't really know. We did have some media coverage from sort of your independent journalists, and we have had things being shared, but I can't really comment on whether we've had any feedback at all, like Bridget Phillipson passing comment or anything like that. Sorry, Christine, if I can't answer that. Jade has mentioned that Facebook holds the video for a month, so you can go back and watch the bits you've missed. So, please take responsibility to catch up, because we will highlight the most important things you need to know in this live on a Friday evening.
All right, if I just jump in a sec. Yeah. The whole of this video will be on the YouTube channel for as long as Juliet keeps it up there, unedited. A edited down version that gets rid of the ums and the buts and the bits we muck up, that goes out on Substack on Monday, also goes on the YouTube channel because it does it for us. And as Jade's been saying, the Facebook video is up for 30 days. So.
Yeah, so there's many ways. So so the YouTube channel doesn't go away. So you can go and check stuff there anytime really easily, or subscribe so that you get notified when there's new content. And of course, we have the Substack, we have our lives. There's many ways to make sure that you are kept updated. So just today, Randall Hardy has uploaded a new video which talks about some of what has been happening in the House of Lords. So as you should know, the bill at the moment is in report stage in the House of Lords. We were thinking that they would be discussing the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill this past Wednesday, the 21st of January, but they didn't get to it, and Randall will explain why. And it is, if you haven't understood quite how things work, that's a good video to go and watch. And it is on the YouTube channel, which is called the Home Education Channel. Couldn't really be easier to search the Home Education Channel. On Wednesday, there were some amendments added at the last minute to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill. Now, hopefully, if you watched last week's live, we spoke about some of the nasty, nasty amendments that Baroness Smith of Malvern had added to the bill. Now, she represents the government, so the chances of those being voted out is quite small. Nonetheless, you can still contact Lords about them and have your say. But then we had Baroness Barron, who is a Conservative peer, and she added some really questionable amendments. It's quite concerning because we're not quite sure what she's thinking. So let's have a look here. If you go on Fiona Nicholson's Ed Yourself page, she's really, really good at breaking things down and making it easy for ordinary people to understand, because the bill is obviously very challenging to read, the wording they use and the cross-referencing. We have Amendment 121A, which is that in local authorities must consent to the withdrawal of a child from school if there are currently or have ever been inquiries, proceedings, or action initiated in relation to the child under Section 31 or 47 of the Children Act 1989, or the child is currently classified as a child in need under Section 17 of that Act. Now, I think Baroness Smith had a 5-year thing. Is that right? And Barron is saying if they've ever been under investigation. Now, the problem with this is, what if you approach the council, like your local authority or something, for some support because your child is disabled? What if something happened to your child that was a safeguarding issue, but it has nothing to do with you, with the parents? There are many, many reasons why a child may have had inquiries or proceedings. And what if it's a foster child that was under those proceedings? It's saying that those children are subject to local authority consent, whether they are able to be withdrawn from school. This is really bad, because Baroness Smith said if they'd had anything for the past 5 years. And Baroness Barron, what on earth is she thinking? To say if they've ever been, I don't know. I think perhaps she's been smoking her socks this week. But anyway, we'll be kind and say maybe that's what she was doing.
It's worth adding in there that this isn't just going to be highly kind of too broad a net to be kind of catching people with, but it's also going to potentially stop people from seeking help. And this is what we've raised a number of times. And so, if you're on the fence about this, perhaps you're thinking, oh, it's a good idea. And you have to think, like, at any point, if you've got an ex-partner from 10 years before it's domestic abuse and they've been gone for a very long time, it's county lines, something, vulnerability that came from the school playground, that's a huge problem. But also the amount of parents that potentially, and I've heard this from parents, say if these kind of rules were in, and this was back when the bill started and they were just talking about it, presently, not all this historic stuff, they wouldn't have sought help. They wouldn't have called the domestic abuse helpline. They wouldn't have called the Samaritans.
Well, that's the thing. If you have a child that is disabled and needs a bit of support, you want to access support, you're going to think twice about it now. And that is not in the child's best interest at all, is it?
Yeah, because quite often we know that these decisions are very often thought about for sometimes years. Sometimes parents are mulling, they know that home ed is at the back of their mind and they're just waiting for the HCP, they're just waiting for the tribunal, they're just waiting for the EOTUS plan, they're just waiting for all the things, and it gets to a point where they know their child is suffering in school and that the local authority isn't moving quickly enough to put something in place. They know that home education is their backup plan. So it's not even like people make this decision really quickly. Families I've spoken to have said, I knew that home ed was always there for us, but it took us 6 months, 3 months, 12 months before we accessed it. And so, it's something that it's a huge amount of harm.
And we've also got things like potentially malicious referrals where it still has to be investigated. And if you look at that amendment, it's saying, if they've ever been investigated, which could be, what a load of nonsense and what a time waste for social workers and so on. Then we've also got an amendment where the views of a non-resident parent would be sought. So what if there's domestic violence? What if there's a need need for the parent to not give away her whereabouts, the whereabouts of the child, because there's a threat of violence. We've got the amendment would require the local authority to conduct a home visit where a child has ever been subject to care proceedings named in a child protection plan. And then another one where they have to include information in relation to care proceedings, both for the child and their siblings. So you can see these are quite extreme. I wonder if there isn't some kind of tactical thing behind it. There was a comment from Jodie who said she emailed Baroness Lister, who replied and said these would be voted down as Baron is opposition. So because they're not government amendments. But this does make me wonder a little bit.
Not necessarily. I mean, they could be, but I mean, this isn't exactly going against Bridget's tone of voice, is it? I mean, she could have written them. We hope that the government will be moderate and think that's excessive, but it pushes it even further. And we know the ones that Smith put in, that the government wanted more, and that was kind of seen as they didn't go for the throat. They were kind of had to be tempered by various conversations, back office conversations. So this could be exactly what Bridget and her pals want. So I think absolutely it'd be great. I hope that happens 100%.
And there's also many reasons why people seek support. It might be because you've temporarily been in a difficult situation and you needed to try and get support, maybe financially or whatever. I don't know what reasons are, but it just is far too wide a net. And this is probably not likely, but you sort of wonder if she hasn't put these in just to make Baroness Smith look less bad. At least it's not all the time. Maybe they're big buddies, playing devil's advocate. I don't know, but anyway, they are not.
And they've
very
also
nice
opposition has actually been winning quite a few of the votes this week. We've seen, in fact, they've won the majority they've chosen to take to a vote.
Yeah, and there is some thinking that it might be to test the will of the House. So she might be putting it there just to see how far Lords would let it go. And that's not good either. This is not good because we have lost the support of the Conservative Party's front benches. And perhaps this is her way of thinking, because we know that it's not just Labour that have tried to put a bill through. The Conservatives have also tried to put a bill through, schools bill a few years ago. And we know it won't go away if the Tories suddenly had to come in, back into government. We can't trust that they don't have their own agendas and bias and so on. We need to make sure that these amendments are opposed, but there might be something more to it. And so we need to be very wary and also be making sure that Baroness Smith's amendments are opposed if possible.
I think it's also worth highlighting here how close, I've always had a very keen, a massive part of my life is about supporting the interests of neurodivergent people and how they're completely not being properly represented or understood in education and workplace and society. And I think we have to really see that there is a lot going on behind the scenes. We've got this SEND white paper that's been postponed and is due. All the government noises that we're hearing is completely not understanding SEND, completely downplaying lower support needs. They're very much about, okay, if a kid's going to be kicking tables over and punching people, they can go to specialist school and everybody else can suck it up in mainstream and plug them into AI in the corner. And no, that isn't a direct quote. That's me summarizing. And I think there's stuff going on, and a lot of these things, a lot of these amendments and the whole feel of the bill is a massive attack on SEND families and SEND young people. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I do think we can't look at these things independently. We have to be aware that there is a massive change in the country, as we're seeing in America. A lot of saying the worst you could say about SEND and kind of erasing it and minimalizing it and playing it down, and lots of talk of over diagnosis and over this and under this. And so I think that there's certainly more to this than just home education.
Yeah. So certainly I would ask you to keep an eye on Fiona's page as well, because she explains these things in a very dispassionate and clear way, whereas reading the bill itself can be really hard. So I want to also just talk for a little bit about a report stage. So Wednesday the 28th will be the next report committee meeting. And we think, so since they didn't get to the children's wellbeing bill on, although they were talking about the social media ban, weren't they? That was a big distraction. Thankfully, I welcome any delay, because it gives people a chance to contact more lords and contact more MPs. So let's be thankful for that, a bit of respite. So we expect on the 28th that they may then get to the children not in school register clauses. And I wanted to just take a little bit of time, because we've been very caught up with the different parts of the bill. At the heart of it, the thing we've opposed for years, since 2009, when I think it was first raised, we are opposed to the idea of a register for home educators. Why are we opposed to this register? Some will argue we are already known to local authorities, but bear in mind, not everybody is. And even if you are known, do you think that we should be on a register simply because we choose to home educate? That is at the crux of the matter. I mean, Jen, I don't know if you've got thoughts on what is it that is so offensive to home educators about a register.
Yeah, I've got lots of thoughts on them. I'm more than happy to share. 1 minute, let me just get my screen in the right place. Unpopular opinion, I don't technically have a problem with the register. If it was just a register, I don't care having a name on a piece of paper if that's all it is. And if it includes some support, if it means that you're going to get maybe some vouchers each year towards accessing museums and art galleries and a pass for the swimming pool and your GCSEs paid for, no problem. But that isn't what any of our governments has ever been offering when they've talked about a register. It's been about control. It's been about regulation. It's come with lots of words that subtly change the onus from kind of parental decision, and the LA have got a bit of an overlooking, like, yeah, if things start looking dodgy, we'll step in, to the LA choose if it's a suitable education, the LA assess, the LA make this decision, the LA need to see the reports, the LA need to be getting a copious amount of information. So that equals a state overreach. It's an invasion of privacy. And it's just that reminder that home education is a legal right. And that actually children, I had this discussion with my daughter, actually, because someone she knows is being a little bit, tiny bit ignorant about everything, and has this idea about all these hidden home educating children. And we sat there and we listed all the ways that home educated children are seen from the groups and clubs, and things like next door neighbours and shopkeepers and library assistants and doctors and dentists and opticians and all sorts. There's a whole ream, tutors, everything. There's a whole ream, extended family members. We know that actually that is incredibly rare that a child is completely hidden. And yes, there are odd cases when this happens. However, there is no evidence that a register would catch that. And the harm it could cause, you might save 5 kids, but if you harm 5,000 or 50,000 in the process, it's not really something we're going to do, is it? So that's why we're against registers. It's because, unfortunately, we haven't had a government come along yet that can be trusted to manage it. And even if they did, it's who's coming next.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that it has always been the presumption that parents are trusted unless they're not able to be trusted. Okay, so we've got things like it's based on the assumption that the local authority are acting lawfully in good faith, and they're all more qualified. We also have the potential for leaking of data or loss of data. So there's a lot of issues with it. And for me personally, it was always a case of, as a parent, I'm taking care of my children, and it's actually nobody's business unless I'm not doing that job, unless I'm not doing what I need to do as a parent. And yeah, I think it's just, when something crosses a line, when somebody says something to you and you know something's wrong. You know when something's off, it doesn't feel right. A line has been crossed, whether it's somebody saying something to you or being hurt and offended in a certain way. And I think for me, this register, I feel that is crossing a line in terms of my rights as an individual, and it goes against the spirit of everything England has stood for thousands and thousands of years. We have a serious data breach in Leeds, and we have local authorities. Obviously, there are really good local authorities, but they don't actually really think about what information they're sharing. Even if you haven't given consent, they still share it. I saw somebody shared a post recently about how they'd explicitly asked not for their data to be shared, but it was shared nonetheless. We also know that local authorities don't necessarily always have the qualifications. Some do. Some have a teaching qualification. Some have teaching with safeguarding qualification, but are not necessarily all qualified to actually even understand a different way of education, a different way of learning. Council employee accessing a child's data.
I think it's really worth acknowledging that particularly primary school level, particularly generally primary school level, you have a degree either in education, but most of them will just have a general degree, like an English degree, and they will do years teacher training, which includes a huge amount of information on the job stuff, crowd control, all of these things. And so that's not being critical of primary school teachers, but certainly at primary level, parents are just as equipped, in fact, more than equipped, because they are a specialist in their child. They know everything about their child. They know what they need, how they need it delivered, what breaks they need. So I think it's always worth in these times to also remember that, there are some incredible teachers, but a lot of them are not any more skilled, and in fact a lot of parents are more skilled just from their life experience, their training, their education, and their knowledge of their child.
And without needing to be mean or nasty in any way, the local authorities actually set up to serve us and to work for us and to support us. That's what they're actually set up for. But what a register will do is it puts them in a position where they believe they actually own that responsibility. They're taking that responsibility. And the reason, we fought back against a register for all these years is because, as far as we're concerned, that information belongs to our children and to us, and it shouldn't be used anywhere without our consent. And if you get some food out the fridge and it looks off and it smells off and it is off, it's off. And to me, that's what a register is. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sit right. And it goes against the spirit of this country, which is all about freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And your home is your castle, your private family life, all of those things is what England has been about. And we just find those attitudes shifting now to where they're comparing themselves to Germany and saying, well, actually, Germany, you wouldn't even been allowed to do this. So, and it's where, what was the other one where you be thankful that we're even allowing you to keep these little crumbs of freedom. We could be as bad as Germany and France.
It's very interesting how language is used, isn't it? And it's that subtle way that it goes from, Germany made this really extreme decision and it's really not been ideal, particularly when police have been banging on the door to drag children into school, to suddenly, everyone else in Europe's doing it this way and we're the odd ones out. And and you're like, well, no, we're just the last semblance of sanity. It's not that they're all doing it for really good reasons. They're all doing it because of massive state overreach. And we should be learning from that and and concerned about that.
Well, we should be leading the way, actually, in terms of freedom. And we did, in the past we did, in respect of slavery and those kinds of things. Britain led the way. So, where data exists, misuse can happen, and it can happen very easily, and it can be extremely dangerous, particularly with this unique identifying number that they want, where basically police, educators, social workers, health professionals can all access information. So imagine if your child had some serious mental health issues at some point in their life, and in the future they have a run-in with the police, and the police can go and look up that information and can call that into question, and then the social worker comes along and say, well, clearly this child's got issues and they're not stable because they're able to see all that. And then why would you want to go to the doctor for help? If you have concerns about anything like that, why would you want to go to the doctor for help? So they actually really are leaving people with very few options.
And then you've got the rise of parent blame and the fact that all this data on our children is going to be gathered together. They're saying they're going to process it with AI to identify risks both locally and nationally. But then they're also saying, but there's all these risks online, and there's all these risks that they get exposed in school, on the way in and out of school, wherever else in life, and yet parents aren't going to have any access to that data. What if there is something they would recognize that the AI and anyone else involved just won't pick up on because they don't know the child?
But not to mention how many parents have raised concerns about their children to professionals and they ignore it. Suddenly, AI's opinion is more important than that of the person who lives with the child. It's actually shocking that they're even thinking that way. I just have to shake my head and think, what on earth are these people drinking? What is in the Kool-Aid, that they are drinking so wholeheartedly?
We are very, very quick to hand over absolutely everything to something which even the layman person knows. There's serious questions around AI, and I don't just mean ethics. There's learning from inaccurate information, the fact that it is still learning. There's so much room for error. The amount of times I've had, I don't use AI much because I'm a bit ethically against it. I have used it. I do use it sometimes, and I remember asking it something fairly boring, and then it got the day of the week wrong. It knew I was in the UK, and I had to argue with it like 3 times. And I was like, at the end I said, but it's Saturday. And it was like, oh yes, you're right. And I'm like, I know. And you're like, if it doesn't have the computational power to get the basics, then what on earth are we doing trusting it with analysing this level of data and handing over? I mean, I think Bridget Phillipson, goodness me, that woman must be she loves AI. I'm not going to say anything I shouldn't, but something interesting's going on there, and it will not be long before we don't need teachers anymore because it will all be AI. I mean, it's bad enough now that a lot of secondaries are very PowerPoint heavy, but it's, we won't need the teachers. We'll just need classroom managers.
Yeah, that's right. Because AI, at this stage, it's just massively experimental still. And why are we agreeing to put all our children's data into it? They are the test subjects.
Yeah, it really doesn't sit right. We have quite a long message here from Jade about how the bill can actually cause harm. And this is one of those things where, sometimes you have to take medicine for something, but the side effects are going to have worse effect on you than the medicine will benefit you. And that's what I think what Jade is saying here. They're going to try and give you these services, but actually the side effects of it are far worse than the so-called treatment itself, and they're what they're trying to do. Jade is talking about her son, who's been well known to the local authority their whole life. A quality of life significantly diminished. They wanted to sign him off education. Basically, harm unfolded around the supervision of around 30 to 40 professionals, not including managers, and they did nothing despite actually knowing of the situation. And Jade has been the only one educating him on role. So, the thing is, at the end of the day, AI doesn't really care about your kids either. I just wanted to make that point about the register and the harms of a register for people to just really seriously consider what the issues are around a register.
And it's just not, it's the current home ed register on steroids, I think, as well. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm already on a register. And it's like, yeah, great. But all of these things are going to impact you. And all the families who are already home educating and thinking, oh, great, I've got out of that because we had a child protection thing years ago, or we were on this plan, or we were, but they're going to look at everybody. They're not just going to go, well, you've deregistered already, we'll ignore you. I mean, it's huge. And I think the other thing is, like we're saying, is I think it's going to be utter carnage when this goes through. Utter carnage. We already, our SEND system, like our country is fracturing as far as education, schools, well-being, sorry, it's a point of phrase, and SEND goes. And this comes in, what is going to happen? And there is an absolute possibility that if it all goes through, that Labour will go out, someone else will come in, they'll reverse parts of it and go, okay, that wasn't a good idea, that wasn't a good idea. But the amount of damage that's going to happen in the meantime, so I think even if you're sat back thinking, not suggesting anybody doesn't care, but you're kind of thinking, oh, you know, even if it gets through, we'll get a new government, or, oh, you know, it'll all go to pot and there'll be a judicial review on it, and it will get, you know, things will get lessened or overturned. But it's like that could take years, and the amount of harm in the meantime is huge. So I just think whichever way you look at this, whichever direction you're coming from, there isn't a sweet spot of being able to say we don't need to talk about it now, or it doesn't really matter, or oh, we're all a bit, you know, we've got other stuff, we'll worry about it in the future. Because if you sit there and look at all the implications of all the amendments, and if they go through, and how that could impact people already home educating, let alone the impact for their children's children, it's massive.
Yes, and Amy's highlighted a story which I think I saw as well, where a child with a learning disability had issues and I think was being reported to social services, but basically they were told that if they had another trip to A&E in the year, that they'd kind of be, you know, that there would be sort of consequences. And that's not okay. You know, we need people to feel like they can get the support they need. So anyway, just to finish up, I want to please just remind you all, if you want to be sure to receive updates, there are several ways you can do it. One is, if you're on Facebook, put in the comments !notify, and you should be notified every time we go live. And is it !Substack to get that information?
That's the one. Yep.
And what does that give you?
That gives you a link straight to the Substack.
Okay, so that will give you a link to Substack. So please subscribe. We only have about, considering the size of this group, we only have about 200 subscribers to the Substack, and it is a free tool that will give you all of this information, links to the live, all of the things we've discussed in your inbox every Monday morning. So just a comment that's on the YouTube: freedom lost is not easily restored. Mostly it stays gone, and that is very true. We should never give up freedom, because any freedom that once you've lost it, it's very hard to get back. Yeah, so there's the Substack, there's a YouTube you can subscribe to, and also you can if you're in the Home Education Action Group, you can do a daily scroll down to see what's new, anything I need to be aware of, and also the Stop the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill page. You can go and follow that to get any updates on actions and so on. For this week, your action is to write to Lords that you would like them to oppose Baroness Barron's amendments, and maybe Baroness Smith's as well. Anything else they should do this week?
Can I add an action as well? So I'm producing at the moment some pink posts. I say that they're all the same and they're all going to be pink. There's one for SEND and home education already, and there's going to be some other ones. Can you, if you follow my page and just keep an eye on it, they'll be popping up, and they're specifically designed to share into a group, so you don't have to write tons. Please share them into local home ed groups, SEND groups. There's going to be one for general parents. There's going to be one for groups that kind of deal with more like state overreach and that kind of stuff. So if you are in a few different groups, if you could just share them into there and just say, let's take a look. They are designed to just make people go, oh, and it just has links. It'll have links already in the post, in the comments of the post, to get more information. So they're not meant to scare. They're meant to make people stop and look, and then hopefully seek some information.
You can follow Jen's page. And yeah, there's lots of ways to get information, but the best is just to make sure you're subscribed to these different things, so that you get notified of any new content. So I think that is it for tonight. Don't give up. Yeah,
to remember to when you're writing to peers, they've got a really strict spam filter on the House of Lords email system. It only takes 6 identical emails for all of those emails and any subsequent emails using the same text to get deleted. So you need to be a little creative, just changing up your wording depending on who you're contacting. Yeah. And basically just keep badgering peers to, 1, turn up on Wednesday to come and vote against those amendments that we really don't like. And 2, especially if you're wanting to try and get them to submit any new amendments, I think they need to be in on Monday, like actually in from the peer to the clerk. So that's a job for absolutely over the weekend, if there's still time, but it's still worth a go.
Yeah.
And then for people writing, need to start softening up their MPs, getting ready for ping pong. That's the other stage, that once it's got report stage here in the Lords, followed by the 3rd reading, which my understanding is that's where the Lords tried to tidy up the different amendments to make them all work together. Then it's off back to the House of Commons, where they get given a list of the amendments the Lords want to make, and they either agree to it or they say we don't agree, and it gets sent back to the Lords, and that is the ping pong stage.
Yeah.
So it's time to soften up our MPs.
Yeah. So don't stop writing to your MPs. They can only ignore so many people. Once it gets past a certain point, they can't really walk away from it anymore.
I just wanted to highlight this comment because, Melissa, this is something you can write to your MP about. A lot of the government amendments were to do with what's called the GDPR override, which allows the government to share information between different databases and departments. Now, a lot of us had letters back from our MPs saying, oh, we know this is all a big change, but GDPR still applies. So just literally ask your MP, what is the GDPR override? Could you explain it to me, please? And then they have to go away and find out what it actually means instead of just waving it through like they often do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks those of you who've engaged with us tonight. It's always encouraging to get a lot of conversation on here, and we appreciate it. And we will be back next Friday at 8 p.m. again for our next update. So take care and have a good weekend.
Bye.